just opened about a month ago. We were all very happy around here. Everybody's just a free-for-all. Everybody's calling each other from north of here to come south. We were just over at the western.
Calling each other to what?
To come out here and take whatever they want. We saw it being broken into. People are just driving their cars in and taking absolutely everything.
Why do you think they're doing this? Why?
I'm actually just waiting for somebody to open up with an AK-47 or something, man. We really even shouldn't be here.
Does it surprise you that this sort of a frenzy starts?
Not now. I think it's been publicized so much on the TV that, I mean, even we came out to see what was going on. I stayed away from it last night, but I don't live too far from here. And, I mean,
this has nothing to do with Rodney King.
This has nothing to do at all. And I just think this is just generating so much more. I mean, it makes you even want to go in yourself, and you have to refrain from it. Nobody's doing anything. Everybody's coming in and just taking what they want.
Well, there are not enough police officers to come down here. No, this is about taking taking something.
We're not free. We're not free.
Well, this is about just taking things because you can do it. As far as the police officers are no, but the police officers are not at this area. They're about, I would guess, as I said, 5 blocks away. So there's no way that everything can be cleaned out of here until actually someone like the police would try to come up and stop it, and that won't happen right now.
You don't feel like you're in any danger, do you, Steve?
Well, I don't feel like I'm in any danger at the moment I'm not over here trying to stop somebody from doing any of this. No.
That's what's so ironic.
That couple said they do live in that area, right?
Yes, they do. They live just north of here.
They didn't seem at all frightened about anything happening to their homes, but they did stay out of the area last night. Isn't that what she said?
Yes. What about if, let me ask, are you afraid about something happening to your home here since you live in the area?
Well, yeah, last night I kept communicating back and forth with my parents who came to try to pick up my nephew to get him out of the neighborhood. And I was in the Cheviot Hills area, but I work in Inglewood, and that's where I left last night. And trying to come in here, I couldn't get in. It was too terrible. And yeah, we are afraid. I mean, it's only 5 to 6 blocks away, and it just keeps escalating. It's going north, south, east, and west. It's not stopping because they know that the police is not coming at all. They're not afraid. They're going in, taking out, going in, taking out, packing up their cars. License plates are being exposed, and nothing's being done.
Well, it is certainly a scene that, yeah, we only see something like this when you don't think of it as being in the United States at all when you look at something like this.
Right now they're looting the businesses, and we're wondering how long it's going to take for them to get into the residential area. And that's a possibility.
This is just a drive-through. Drive-through, get what you want, drive out. Drive-through, get what you want.
See if we can see people driving up.
Let's take a look. Let me look over. I'm trying to see whether or not I can see some people running down the street on the other side. I suppose that this is probably attracting more people. I mean, once you get people started running in one direction, more and more come. Of course, and I can see the shoe store that's across the street from this place is just about totally emptied out. So here, as soon as they get everything out of here, and there's a guy, yeah, right here in the front. If we can pan a little left there, Bill. Here's a guy putting new tires on his car, changing tires, doing something with it. Whether or not he's taking the tires out of the store, I can't tell. But more people, yes. See, you see more people running up this way to see whatever they can get.
Steve,
and now they've started a fire inside, or a fire extinguisher. Yeah, it looks like a fire extinguisher.
Steve, I hesitate to even repeat your location. I'd hate for more people to run out there. As the woman you're with there, you were interviewing a moment ago, said that they heard about it on the news and ran down there to get... These scenes from KTLA in Los Angeles, people going into an auto parts store and a shoe store and an apparent free-for-all, a situation that overnight was even worse and that police understandably had a hard time controlling. The National Guard Bureau at the Pentagon reports that 2,000 Army National Guard troops from California's 40th Infantry Division have been mobilized for active duty, but are still awaiting final orders before they are dispatched to the scene. We'll have more news right after this break. Let's go through those now if we can.
Going up, and our affiliate KTLA will supply us some information here.
Guys came up to the front of this store and just started throwing rocks through the front window. Well, if they've got that, any policeman that's going to try and arrest one of them is going to have 5 of them either throwing rocks at him or jumping on him.
Again, we're talking to Steve Lentz. He's at Western and Washington, where police are moving into that area. They blared their sirens very plainly before they arrived, hoping that people would take off, and some of them have, the looters in that area. But you can see, look at the traffic here. You can see, stay away from these areas that we've been talking about this morning. There's no use going there. I'm sorry, Steve, I interrupted you.
That's okay. Some of the people who were doing the looting, I know they're over there on that other corner, straight across the street now, watching, having hidden something either with, you know, in a car. I've seen people put things in trunks, and then they just go stand and watch when the police come up. You know, as long as they aren't seen, they figure, hey, I'm okay.
You know, people at home may be wondering, well, why doesn't the police just block off every street in South Central Los Angeles, keep everyone out? But this is a huge area. You can't just shut the city down and say you can't go anywhere. It's nearly impossible to do that.
That will take the National Guard. You know, there are still people inside the Chief's store. I can see them still looting inside the store, even though the police are out here. They're over on the right side of the store now. I can see 2 or 3 different individuals in there looting the store.
Well, they've got it all to themselves now.
Yeah, now they have it to themselves. And the police aren't over on this side yet, so they are still just in there taking whatever they want. Whether, well, I assume the only way they're going to get out is maybe the front door, unless they have found a rear exit. But there are still several inside picking up whatever they want to get. Now we've got more police headed this way because we can hear the sirens. In fact, yes, I see there is one car coming up Western now and going around toward the back of the store.
But I would think pretty soon, if this continues as it is, that they will at least block this area off, at least temporarily. Once again, some areas of the city have been cordoned off. You can't go to those areas, but it'd be impossible.
All right, the state of emergency continues in Los Angeles. The city council and the mayor are in private session, and the police, as you see, are trying to maintain control in Los Angeles as we continue following this story. Cheryl?
Democratic presidential candidate Bill Clinton says the verdict surprised him, and he
stands right now. Cheryl?
We'd like to hear from you. In just a few minutes, we'll be taking your phone calls and opinions on the L.A. police verdict. The number is area code 404-221-0218. We'll be back after this.
Strongly disagree with the verdict. But the way people are looting and stealing and hurting other people, it makes no sense, and it's counterproductive, and it just shows just a total lack of class and values.
More from Georgia.
Yes, I just believe the verdict was unfair, but the verdict has been reached. I think we need to look at the humanistic approach and let the federal government do their part, at least give them a chance to show what they can do for the investigation.
All righty, and we'll hear from Virginia.
We won't hear from Virginia. We'll take more calls in just a moment. First, let's switch up KTLA, our affiliate out there, see if they have any information for us.
Yeah, there are plenty of people out just to the south standing on the street corner watching the firefighters. You don't know if they've been evacuated or just the people that come by and watch. As a matter of fact, on all the street corners there, you could see people gathered watching. We don't know where they're coming from. But I'm sure they must have evacuated at least the adjacent apartment building to this one.
All right, let's take a call from Georgia where we're watching these pictures. Georgia, your reaction to the verdict?
No, you don't know that.
Hello?
Hello, Georgia. Go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to say that although I do not advocate violence in Los Angeles, I can understand why these people are reacting the way that they are. I do feel that we should react, not necessarily violently, but I think that we have set back and taken the injustice that's in the judicial system long enough, and to have it on film and for these police officers to still be acquitted for that crime, it's not fair. And although, like I said, I feel sorry for these people, what they're doing to their own selves, but if they thought that there was another way that they could get justice done, I'm sure they would do it. This is the only way that they could do it. I do hope that people will react differently than violently, but I do say that people please react.
Thank you, Georgia. Pennsylvania's on the line. Let's move on to Pennsylvania.
Yes, I'd like to know why that nobody is making an issue of the fact that Rodney King was committing a criminal act. The force that the police used was excessive, but they're living in a war zone every day with the things that they have to deal with, and that maybe that was a bad reaction to what happened, but still he was a criminal and he was committing a criminal act, and maybe he could have possibly even killed somebody with the high rate of speed that he was driving in. And that I don't think it's as racial as people think.
You've made an issue of it, Pennsylvania. Back to Georgia.
Yes, it's not a matter of Rodney King being a criminal or not. It's just the fact that we have to learn how to treat people as human beings. It doesn't matter if they're black, white, red, whatever color they are. It's not fair, and the verdict is disgusting. And we need to look at ourselves as Americans and as people in general and decide how we want to treat people. Thank you.
Let's hear from Ohio. Go ahead, Ohio.
Yes, I want to say that I resent this type of action being referred to as rioting, stemming from the causes that they do. We can see very clearly this is a revolt, and it will continue to happen. All the leaders that have spoken today on CNN talk of punitive action rather than seeing what this type of activity stems from. They're not speaking to the political causes that have this going on, to human rights.
All right. If you have just tuned in, the pictures we're watching is of an apartment fire in Los Angeles now being brought under control while we take another call. This one from Georgia. Georgia, you there?
Georgia, I'd just like to comment that I think that the verdict is appalling. I'm very angry. I'd like to comment on the lady, the juror that they interviewed. She said that their finding was not racist, and she made a very racial statement. She said that if it had been a bunch of white cops after black guys, they would have beat up all three guys. But it was clear that Rodney King was driving, and I guess there was a high-speed chase, and it was evident that the police were angry at him, and if he was defiant or combative, as they say, but I still don't think that justified the beating, and I'm just really surprised that this kind of thing could happen in America. I'm a black man, and I'm ashamed to be an American today.
Thank you. Washington State, you're on the line.
Hello. Yes, I think that the judicial system has really fallen down at this situation. I think that the jury should be investigated and find out just who bought them off.
Diagonally, back to Georgia. Hello, Georgia.
Yes, I would just like to say that it's really a shame when your little kids are watching the news and they want to know what country we're watching. They had no idea that we were even watching something that is happening in the United States.
Thank you, Georgia, and that concludes this portion where we are taking your phone calls. We appreciate hearing from you. These pictures, courtesy KCAL in California, a burning apartment fire. The situation still not completely under control in Los Angeles. City of Atlanta, to protest that verdict in the Rodney King case. Several of the marches, we are told, went to underground Atlanta, breaking windows and causing other damage to the complex. The complex has now been closed. That is underground Atlanta for the remainder of the day. There are reports of people being beaten, and police have made several arrests.
Parts of Los Angeles have become a kind of urban war zone. Overnight, sirens scream, bright flames towered against the night sky, and there was gunfire. The pictures, though, speak more profoundly than words. Here are some of the pictures from a long, violent night, the worst the city has seen since the Watts riots 27 years ago.
No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace.
because of the numerous fires, we just weren't able to address all the different problems. So that was really difficult for us.
Look at this. Yeah, I got him right at me. And then they got me with this bottle here.
Hey, live here. Huh? Hey, live here. Where do you live?
1, 2, 3, 4.
You're gonna have to wait. Can't go over there while the fire department's putting out the fire. Okay? Just hold on. Come back over here and wait. I'll let you know when it's time.
Sí, aquí. 12:23.
These people, they had nothing to do with it. Some of them may have even supported the cops being prosecuted. I don't think that they should have gone to this extent to burn buildings down.
I feel that they should have taken it if they were going to use violence or destruction as a way of expressing their feelings, that they should have taken it to Simi Valley, to Beverly Hills, to where the people that they're fighting against live, not in their own neighborhoods where the prices are going to skyrocket when they reopen the stores. And who's going to pay but us? They're defeating the whole purpose.
We will leave you for now. We're going to continue to keep pace with this dramatic story. This is Newsday. I'm Lou Waters.
I'm Cheryl Attkison. Frank Cessno tells us what's coming up next.
Thanks, Cheryl. International reaction to the Rodney King case and its aftermath coming up next on the International Hour. We'll also have a live report from the White House to see what President Bush has to say about the situation. That and more just ahead.
4 white police officers involved in the beating of black motorist Rodney King. To our viewers from around the world, good evening from London. I'm Hillary Bowker.
And good afternoon from CNN Center in Atlanta. I'm Frank Cessno. Well, the National Guard is on alert. A dusk-to-dawn curfew is in effect. But that has not stopped the looting and the arson from breaking out again today in parts of Los Angeles. A pall of smoke hangs over the city from dozens of fires still dotting the landscape. At least 9 people were killed, nearly 200 injured in rioting that rocked South Central Los Angeles last night. The Los Angeles Fire Department estimates property damage in the millions of dollars. Looters are prowling the streets again today, hauling goods out of unprotected stores in broad daylight. The looters run away when police officers arrive, only to return later when the officers move on. There are also reports of sniper fire in the area. The rioting erupted just hours after a jury handed down a verdict in the brutality trial of 4 white Los Angeles police officers. All 4 were acquitted in the beating of black motorist Rodney King, a beating captured by a home video camera. There were no blacks on the jury. CNN's Ann McDermott has been following the volatile situation in Los Angeles, and she joins us now from the scene with the latest. Ann?
A Los Angeles police captain just told us the situation is not under control. And if you question that, all you have to do is look at the smoky haze that hangs over the city. The fires continue to burn in various pockets of the community, and some of them are quite big ones. However, it is still not much compared with last night, when one tired fire department official told us calls reporting fires were coming in at the rate of 3 a minute. Meanwhile, CNN's Bob Vito has more on the tragic events of last night.
The morning after in South Central Los Angeles, smoke billowed up from what once was a popular black-owned supermarket. Fires continued to break out, adding to the hundreds already set. More buildings burned to the ground. Some people fought blazes with garden hoses, trying to save their homes. Sometimes that was risky.
We had people come by in cars, you know, hollering, screaming, talking about, we'll shoot you, let the fire burn.
Where you headed this morning?
Residents said they wish the police, who were much in evidence in the daylight, had been as visible during the night.
What we're trying to do is kind of bring some order to this area by sort of restricting access in here.
People have been real nice out here, and people have been very cooperative with us.
Less than a mile away, some other police officers might not agree. At daylight, they were stationed at a shopping center to stop looting and were met with angry taunts. These people were burned out of the apartment building where they lived. It's now a pile of rubble that sits behind me.
and they search for somewhere else to live.
Children helped sweep up riot debris. Other children just watched and wondered. This man lived here.
It's an idiotic, very idiotic thing to burn up your own neighborhood.
A juror in the Rodney King trial told CNN the verdict didn't cause the riot.
I believe they would be incited to riot had we voted the policemen guilty. I just cannot tie the not guilty verdict into that action. I think it was just, they were just waiting for something to happen so they could go out and vandalize and destroy.
And it's making it hard for us, like Boys Market and all those places, you know. Where we gonna go now to get food and stuff? It's just sad, that's all I can say.
Robert Vito's CNN Los Angeles.
And McDermott, you're still standing by, and obviously you're watching the situation from your vantage point. What can you tell us about what is happening in various parts of the city right now?
Well, police officials have told us that the looting remains steady, and in some areas it actually looks like it might be increasing. You see blocks where people are seen running in and out of stores, fires still underway in these stores. I know the term war zone is quite overused in a situation like this, but to be quite honest, nothing else seems quite appropriate. And for some of the residents, it is a very scary time. I have one of the residents here with me now, Coco Welton, a longtime resident of this area. You don't blame all the violence, particularly on the verdicts, do you? What is the problem?
No, actually, the violence is not really, it's only being precipitated by the verdict. This has been 2 decades in the making. When the industrial advantage was taken away from America and given to the rest of the free world, the cities of America were neglected. You see the result.
This is a problem of economics?
This is absolutely a problem of economics, and as long as people are not working and they're frustrated by the political process, they're going to resort to violence. We advocate that for the Turks against the Iraqs, but whenever it comes to America, we seem to consider violence to be something distasteful.
What is your take on the situation? How long do you think this will go on?
It's going to escalate, and when the charade of looting and burning ends, I believe that those who are armed and serious and dedicated are going to take extreme action, because this has been brewing for over 2 decades. They have not forgotten Eula Love, they have not forgotten Jerry Lee Amy, and they will not forget the verdict that was rendered for the officers in the Rodney King case.
Those names you just mentioned, victims of, alleged victims of police brutality.
Well, I'm not going to use the term brutality. I was not there, but they were victims of police bullets. And this community has been a long time in the making for a confrontation with law enforcement. And they know within themselves that what must be done to get the attention of the government.
Ultimately, do you see some good coming out of this?
Absolutely, there will be good. There was good that came out of the 65. However, the immediate result will be disinvestment. People will not want to invest. Property values will go down. There will be mass upheaval about this type of behavior on the part of the inner city blues.
It sounds like a rather bitter ending to this story.
Well, what has America done for its cities in the last 2 decades? We've had 12 years of Republican administrations. We've had neglect. The industrial advantage was taken away from us and given to foreigners. There is no recourse except to invest in our own country. If that's not going to occur, then we cannot possibly have peace.
Thank you very much. We've been speaking with Coco Welton, a longtime resident of this area, giving his views on the violence. I'm Ann McDermott, CNN, reporting live from Los Angeles.
Thanks, Ann. And just to update you, according to the latest numbers we have in the Los Angeles rioting, there are 9 dead now, 166 or so under arrest, and some 200 injuries reported. President Bush is calling for calm and says the Justice Department is stepping up its investigation into whether Rodney King's civil rights were violated. We get more from CNN's Carl Rochelle, who joins us now from the White House. Carl.
Frank, the president is in Columbus, Ohio now. He arrived just a bit ago. He delayed his departure for Columbus because of the events overnight and this morning in Los Angeles. The White House tells us that the president was up late last night and up early this morning watching the events on television. The president refused to comment on the verdict in the Rodney King trial, but White House spokesman Marlon Fitzwater says the verdict left him with personal frustration and anguish. So too did the violence in Los Angeles.
We are concerned about any question of excessive police violence, and we are equally concerned about excessive public violence. The murder and destruction in the streets of Los Angeles last night and today must be stopped. Lootings, beatings, and random violence against innocent victims must be condemned, and society cannot tolerate this kind of behavior.
The reason the president delayed his trip was to make a telephone call to California Governor Pete Wilson, also to Los Angeles Mayor Tom Bradley, and to meet here at the White House with Attorney General William Barr. The president says the Justice Department is moving to accelerate the investigation into the King beating that had started some months ago.
I'm not going to predict a specific time frame. This is now an active criminal investigation. We're obviously aware that there's a strong interest that it be pressed forward and concluded as expeditiously as we can, and all resources necessary to achieve that will be devoted to the investigation.
One aspect the Justice Department will investigate is whether Rodney King's civil rights were violated during that beating. Health and Human Services Director Louis Sullivan was at the meeting here at the White House earlier this morning between the President and Attorney General William Barr. The White House tells us that Mr. Sullivan has been asked to put together a panel of community leaders from across the nation. They'll meet here at the White House on Friday. That's tomorrow. President Bush is expected to attend that meeting. Carl Rochelle, CNN, reporting live from the White House.
The anger is not confined to Los Angeles. According to CNN staffers who are out in the field, here in Atlanta, there are some difficulties and disturbances as well. Police in riot. Oh, we're going to go to the president right now, who, as we understand, in Columbus, Ohio, is addressing the subject.
Other than revulsion and pain. And mob brutality, the total loss of respect for human life was sickeningly sad. And the frustration all of us felt seeing helpless victims pulled from vehicles and assaulted, it was hard not to turn our eyes away. But we must not turn our eyes away, and we must keep on working to create a climate of understanding and tolerance and condemn a climate of bigotry and fear. Last night was tragic for our country. It was tragic for the city of Los Angeles, for the people of East LA, but there were small acts in all of this ugliness that give us hope. The citizens who ignored the mob, those who helped get the battered victims out of the area. There were people who spent the night in the churches. Many were seeking guidance in the wake of the unfolding chaos in the streets, praying that man's gentler instincts be revealed in the hearts of people driven by hate. And you say, what can we do? Well, before leaving Washington, I spoke to Governor Wilson, I spoke to Mayor Tom Bradley, I spoke to Ben Hooks and some others on this problem. And I also gave this statement to the nation regarding our plans at the federal government level regarding the court case. We have instigated an investigation by the under civil rights protection. We will do what we can from the federal government to help those small business people that have been just wiped out by wanton destruction. And I will keep telling the country that we must stand up against lawlessness and crime wherever it takes place. And regrettably, what is happening in the city, or did happen last night, was purely criminal. It was outrageous what happened, and we were all sickened by what we saw. On the larger issues, I've thought a lot about this, and say what you want, but it is important at a time like this to really talk about some old-fashioned values like respect for the other's rights, respect for property rights, manifest that respect in our actions as well as our words. We must make a compact with each other that we will not tolerate racism and bigotry and anti-Semitism and hate of any kind, anywhere, anytime. And not over the dinner table, not in the boardroom, not in the playground, nowhere. We must condemn violence and make no apology for the rule of law or the requirement to live by it. And yes, in some places in America, there is, regrettably, a cycle of poverty and despair. But if the system perpetuates this cycle, and then we got to change the system. We simply cannot condone violence as a way of changing the system. So we ought to change. We ought to try hard, change the status quo. And we got to do it peacefully, and we've got to do it thoughtfully. And this, I am very hopeful that the calm can be restored to this very important part of our country, and that goodwill will prevail over the hatred that we've seen in the streets in the last few hours. I am now switching off to what I came here to talk to you all about. Let me just first say a word about this city.
President Bush making remarks in Columbus, Ohio to the Ohio Association of Broadcasters there, obviously, on the developments overnight and today in Los Angeles. The president saying that what has happened in Los Angeles is a tragedy for the country. He made an allusion to the fact that he met with Attorney General William Barr before leaving Washington earlier today. The two of them, the administration, looking into the possibility of using some federal regulations under federal laws, under civil rights laws, to reopen the case against the 4 white police officers who've been accused of beating motorist Rodney King. Hillary?
Thanks, Frank. Ahead on the International Hour, the verdicts and ensuing riots are making headlines from Britain to Berlin. Western Reaction is up next.
Brutal conditions, there were some good Samaritans, like the trucker who went to the rescue of one man at the mercy of a mob.
I saw him, again, being beat when he approached the intersection of Normandy and Florence. And I seen exactly what transpired during the whole course of his being beaten. He actually crawled up into the truck and made it 2 blocks down before I actually started helping out. So next thing you know, when he finally got up into the truck and made it 2 blocks, then I was one of the guys who helped him further on into the truck, and we helped drive the truck all the way back here to Daniel Freeman Hospital. I feel bad, again, because you find bad in all races, don't get me wrong, but I just really feel that this man didn't have a chance, and I really don't feel that he was part of that bad scene.
At last report, at least one of the drive-by victims of yesterday's riots was on life support systems at a local hospital.
Along with the angry and violent reactions, the Rodney King trial verdict has been the subject of some tough questions.
How could prosecutors lose what many called an open and shut case? We'll ask L.A. District Attorney Ira Reiner. He'll be our guest in just a moment.
Plus, the latest from Los Angeles and from around the country on the impact of the verdict. Early Prime will keep pace with this dramatic story as we move through the day.
Home on fire.
And we're getting word from our CNN people in Los Angeles that more than 100 branches of Bank of America were closed down today in Los Angeles. The bank's spokesperson says it was for, quote, the safety of our people. Reporters and crews in the field tell CNN that they have seen unrest and looting in areas beyond the violent zones of last night. We're told that stores along Hollywood Boulevard in Hollywood are closed. Their bars are drawn.
The not guilty verdicts in the Rodney King case were a bitter disappointment to prosecutors. Los Angeles District Attorney Ira Reiner says jurors were wrong, but he says that's no excuse for the violence that has followed. Ira Reiner joins us from Los Angeles. Your assessment, Mr. Reiner, why did your office fail to get a single conviction?
Understand, we depend on the jury system in the criminal justice system in America. That means we take 12 ordinary people, selected pretty much at random, and they have the responsibility to make some important decisions. In a case like this, it's a momentous decision. Now, we don't always agree with their decision, but agree or disagree, we have a duty and an obligation to accept it. And in this case, obviously, we profoundly disagree with their decision. But because we disagree with it does not mean that we don't accept it. We accept it because that's what the jury system is about. Now, there are a lot of people who are...
Nice, you know what I'm saying?
The Reverend Jesse Jackson has called the verdict a, quote, grave miscarriage of justice, and after meeting with Attorney General Barr, he called on the federal government to bring civil rights charges quickly against the 4 police officers. He joins us here in Washington. In thinking about the fluidity of the situation, how careful should leaders be in criticizing the actions of officials during the situation? A case in point, I heard you call Police Chief Daryl Gates insensitive and arrogant. Bill Clinton has criticized President Bush's actions thus far.
There is this delicate
is there the potential for it?
There is this delicate line between criticizing them to do the right thing and at the same time trying to quell the explosion, the riots, to save people's lives and seek alternatives to the pain. For example, prior to the Rodney King situation, the big scandal in the LA Police Department was the use of chokeholds, where they were literally using this process, which killed several black men to make them submit. And Daryl Gates' response was, but they got strong necks, the way they're made up biologically. Well, that was bigoted and wrong and hurtful. He showed no remorse when these 4 police officers beat Rodney King in this way. And President Bush, I might add, 3 days after the whole world had seen these beatings on TV, had a meeting of police chiefs at the White House. Included was Daryl Gates. He pointed Daryl Gates out, with whom he campaigned in '88, as an American top cop hero. How insensitive could he be while those tapes of the beating were being seen on TV to exalt him to another level? Now that is insensitive, and it undermines the credibility in the judicial process.
Is there the risk of exploitation of this crisis by politicians?
Well, the risk is not to be exploited by politicians, but the elements for the exploitation is there. The Justice Department, for example, they've prosecuted 128 police brutality acts since 1988 as a case in point. Philip Parnell, a young black teenager shot in the back by 2 police in New Jersey, and they walk away free on the East Coast. But there were no video cameras there, but shots in the back. And King on the West Coast. So it looks to be a kind of open season. And we seek now to restore credibility to the Justice Department and criminal justice system for all involved. It may be some insight into why there are more young black males in America in jail than there are in college. We see an ugly side of America in LA today, and all of us, black and white alike, must address it and bear some responsibility for it.
Last question. What is your solution?
Well, clearly we need a commitment to an urban policy. When we have these explosions in Eastern Europe and the Russian republics, we look at it and say, well, leadership, if you can quell the rioting, if you can stop the civil wars, if you can commit a plan of self-determination, we'll offer a commitment of aid and trade and development, put people back to work, build infrastructure and educational institutions. If we can do that for Eastern Europe and the Russian republics, what about urban America? While infrastructures are collapsing in Chicago and San Diego, while youth are dropping out of school at the 50% level, this is the time, in my judgment, to cut the military budget without cutting the defense and begin to reinvest in America and its people in a major way. Europe and Japan can better afford to defend themselves now, plus nobody's after them, plus we need the money for America.
Reverend Jackson, thank you.
Thank you.
Patrick Buchanan says he's outraged by the violence in Los Angeles, and he doesn't like the way President Bush has reacted to the rioting. Buchanan talked with reporters while campaigning in North Carolina.
I thought the White House, the president's statement was weak and equivocal, and I've read it, and he should be much firmer. He's to uphold the Constitution of the United States, and what happened last night were the constitutional rights to property and to life were relentlessly trampled upon and destroyed in the city of Los Angeles in block after block after block. And I think the first responsibility of the President of the United States is to condemn that.
Buchanan says anger at the verdict in the police beating trial might be justified, but he says there's no justification for the rioting. Buchanan calls the violence inexcusable and indefensible. Prospective presidential candidate H. Ross Perot also is talking about the troubles in Los Angeles. A written statement from Perot says, "I'm disappointed by the verdicts in Los Angeles. The burning and killing in the streets is also a tragedy because it further divides and weakens our country. We must unite to solve our problems. If we fight with one another, we all lose. The federal government must take legal action immediately to demonstrate that justice will be done." We'll be right back.
They let 4 cops get off, and then it led to what you see behind you. And then after that, it's going to lead to more and more until they do something about the police and change the system around to something. If they're not, a lot of people are going to get hurt.
Idiotic thing to burn up your own neighborhood.
Inflamed passions ignite an explosion of violence. The city of Los Angeles, a city burning with rage.
The violence evokes memories of another time of racial unrest. The 1965 Watts riots revisited. Early Prime continues. I'm Lou Waters.
And I'm Cheryl Attkison. Here's the latest on the volatile situation in L.A. A dusk-to-dawn curfew is being extended to the entire city of Los Angeles. The curfew goes into effect in about 4.5 hours. In the words of L.A. Police Chief Daryl Gates, I believe it's absolutely essential to shut down things after sundown. The order to extend the curfew to all parts of the city comes as arson and looting continue for a second straight day. Smoke hangs over the city from dozens of fires burning across the gutted landscape. CNN crews in the field say there are indications the unrest is growing beyond South Central L.A., the area rocked by riots last night. Looters continue to prowl the streets, hauling off goods in broad daylight. Almost 1,000 police have been deployed to the South Central area to deal with vandalism and looting. Bank of America is shutting down more than 100 branches in L.A. for the time being. First Interstate Bank is following suit. The rioting and looting broke out yesterday after a jury acquitted 4 white police officers in the beating of black motorist Rodney King. At least 9 people have died in the violence sparked by the verdict. About 200 others have been reported injured. In Atlanta, protests over yesterday's verdicts turned violent this afternoon. Police blocked off streets in Atlanta's downtown area after reports of a beating, rock throwing, and window smashings. The city's popular underground area was closed after protesters reportedly marched through the complex, breaking windows and causing other damage. The Georgia Capitol also was closed. Police in riot gear were called out to try to restore order. Some arrests have been reported, as well as some injuries. Atlanta's mayor is urging residents of the city to protest the verdicts in non-violent ways.
White Atlantans need to understand what's going on. Black Atlantans, too. The level of frustration and anger is unlike anything I've ever seen.
Try to control the situation here in Los Angeles. Late this afternoon, Mayor Tom Bradley announced that the state of curfew, the mandatory curfew, has been extended to the entire city. That means that from the time the sun goes down tonight, people should be in their homes until the sun comes back up tomorrow morning. I'm Darren Kagan reporting live from Los Angeles. Back to you in the studio.
Now, while the violence continues in Los Angeles, the verdict has raised emotions all over the country. Like elsewhere, many people in our area are surprised, if not stunned, by that jury's decision. News Watch 16's Rick Gall joins us from the newsroom now. Rick, are there any indications that this verdict would have an impact here?
Some people I spoke with today think so. They talk about a possible change in perceptions, trust, and image of police officers. Ordinary citizens across the country may now be a little hesitant in their dealings with the police. Scranton police respond to a call on Prospect Avenue and end up taking a man down to headquarters. You might not think a beating incident and jury verdict in Los Angeles would affect them, but the Lackawanna County District Attorney thinks what happened in L.A. could have a nationwide impact.
I don't think law enforcement wants to see this type of message sent forth. Most police officers, the vast majority, are good persons that are out there trying to protect the people. They don't want their image to be tarnished by the feeling of the citizenry that they're nothing but hoods with badges, batons, and weapons.
3 ministers I spoke with in Scranton agreed that the verdict may affect the whole nation.
I was appalled by the verdict. I was also very much surprised. However, I recognize that it's a verdict, in my opinion, based on fear, the fear that lives.
That will help. She says she has no second thoughts that the verdict was fair.
On the information that was presented.
This was unbelievable. It was a war zone. You have to have been here to believe what happened last night. It was absolutely unbelievable.
Our neighborhood, this is where our children are growing up. You know what I'm saying? But we're scared. I can understand how they feel, but I don't agree. Because this is our neighborhood, this is the recession. People are going to come here and have no jobs.
Right. The problem is that, you see, it's true that we don't agree with them, but they have no choice. These are people who've been deprived from birth. who've had no choice, who have no way to express themselves, and the only way they know to express themselves is their anger, is their violence.
Why take it out on this community? We're crying out for help. Nobody's listening to us, but then we do something stupid to our own community. It doesn't make sense to me.
We're seeing a little bit more looting happening here. It's becoming commonplace. Everywhere you look, fires and looting.
One of the guys commented, it was almost like going through Vietnam. It was just, eerie. No one on the street, and there was no problems, but it was just eerie. You didn't know what to expect.
I just hate to see things like this go down, but I hope from all of this there's a message for everybody that, we're gonna have to come together some kind of way.
It's about time we did something instead of just sitting on our butts. And we sit, and the police just pick. They think they big with the badges or something.
Some members of Congress are denouncing the verdict in the Rodney King beating trial, and they're demanding action from the federal government. The Congressional Black Caucus is calling for the Justice Department to pursue federal civil rights charges against the police officers acquitted in the Rodney King beating case. That group also plans to discuss its concerns with police officials in L.A.
We stand today with our congressional colleagues from California and around this nation, demanding justice and an end to police harassment and brutality, and the implementation of policies to forever stop such acts. Towards that end, the members of the caucus will convene a closed session on next Wednesday with recently appointed Los Angeles Chief of Police, Willie Williams, to discuss the King case and related matters.
The lawmakers also criticized President Bush, saying he needs to encourage the Justice Department to prosecute those Los Angeles police officers.
Reaction to the verdict has not been limited to the United States. Newscasts throughout Europe showed scenes from LA today. Some Europeans are bewildered by the jury's verdict. Still others say the rampage confirms their belief that the U.S. is a violent place. One British journalist was caught in the middle of LA's riot last night.
I had to drive up the wrong the wrong side of the street at about 40 or 50 miles an hour, weaving in and out of bodies and avoiding rocks. Not everyone's idea of California.
I mean, my perception of the United States is it's very violent, and it's like the whole access to guns and the gun laws and the whole sort of gun industry over there. It's got a very powerful lobby.
Presumably it goes back to the frontier days, does it? When every man for himself.
Newscasts in Moscow, Rome, and London all carried reports of the violence in Los Angeles.
One neighborhood in Los Angeles is no stranger to riots.
When Early Prime returns, we'll talk with two people who remember the Watts riots back in 1965.
All right.
And I think what you have to understand is that every officer there has his own perspective and his own opinions. One officer sees one thing, another officer sees a different thing. And I think that's what we had here at the scene. That
the Reverend Al Sharpton commenting.
Well, I think that any mob that lynches people has tunnel vision. I mean, to say you have tunnel vision don't justify what we see on this video. What is amazing to me, Phil, is how people can sympathize when they see violence today in L.A. and cannot have the same sympathy when they see Rodney King been on the ground with policemen taking turns trying to beat his brains out. And they expect us to distribute compassion.
How would you respond to that, Mr. Violante?
Well, you know what? I think what's going on here is absolutely tragic. We have people that are channeling their energies in the wrong direction. What we need in this city right now is a healing process to take place. Instead, what we have is we have people that are agitating, that are sending messages out. And look at what's happening in the city of Los Angeles right now. Some of these statements are inflammatory. They're incisive. And we have terrible, terrible things happening in the city. It's time to start the healing process. I just walked the streets of South Central Los Angeles. I was with the police officers. I was with people in the community. I just came back from there. There are people whose homes are being burnt down. They have done nothing. Absolutely nothing. You cannot justify what is happening right now.
Right. Wait a minute. We're not justifying it. The fact of the matter is, sir, that none of that happened until this jury came back to justify what was done to Rodney King. These people didn't just go out in the streets and start this until they felt that all levels of protection under the law had been exhausted. And for you to justify what happened to Rodney King does not put you in a position to condemn them.
First of all, I am not justifying anything. What I am saying is this trial is over. We need a healing process to take place right now. People with inflammatory remarks are not going to do anything. There are people, citizens of South Central Los Angeles right now, that are having their homes burnt down. They're saying, wait a second, I am being thrown in with everybody else. People are calling, saying that I'm a looter and that I'm doing these things, and I'm not. This is wrong. It's time for the leadership of the community and the city to stand up and say, this has got to stop.
Yeah, but Mr. Violenti, we needed your voice following this arrest to stand up and say, this kind of behavior has got to stop. Tell me why that's not a fair question.
The Los Angeles Police Protective League was there. We said that we needed change. We needed true reform on the police department. That's what we said.
Do we?
And no, let me finish. The problem is, the reason we don't have that is because we are an understaffed police department. We do not have sufficient officers to police the city. We don't have sufficient equipment. We don't have ongoing training programs. We don't have stress reduction programs. The stress reduction program that we had was eliminated by the city council January of this year.
Yes.
There are things that need to take place. You can't. You have to look at everything in total. You can't just look at one aspect of it and say you're going to solve a problem.
The
city of Los Angeles has 2 officers per 1,000. Chicago has 4.5. Detroit has 4.
Yeah. Mr. Glasser makes a point. Sir.
Look, the fact is that if we had seen a film of that kind of a beating from South Africa, we all would have known what it meant. And it meant the same thing in Los Angeles.
That's right.
And the problem is that it didn't start on March 3rd of 1991. Los Angeles has had a pattern of that kind of police brutality, racially disparate, for decades. And the problem has been the leadership in the police department. If the videotape hadn't been there, it would have been covered up. And until we confront the racism that's involved with that, the fact is that when a jury can say that it was reasonable force, that police had no option, when a man is down on the ground for 80 seconds without a weapon, and you got 15 guys sitting around him with guns and clubs, beating him and beating him and beating him, and that is said to be reasonable, I suggest that you shouldn't be surprised when people get angry.
May I just interrupt to say this? We are going to break here, and after the break, we will speak on the telephone with one of the jurors who deliberated for 7 days on the guilt or innocence, subsequently coming forward with a not guilty or an acquittal verdict for all 4 police officers, save a hung jury on one of the charges against Lawrence Powell. And we'll be back in just a minute.
And I could not justify the blows of the baton. To me, what I saw on the tape was unreasonable and with excessive use of force and unnecessary. And I was also watching the TV late last night, pretty close to 3:30 in the morning, and I was really involved, and I saw this young girl speaking that their life was not important. And I remember quoting her say that, and to me it was like these young kids don't realize their life is important. It is to me, and that's why I fought so hard to hang on, because to me I saw that justice was not being done, and I hung on to what I saw in the video and used it as a big part of my evidence.
Right.
And I'm not a respectful person, and to me every person is important.
Yes.
And I'd like to say that I just pray that God will intervene and help us, because that is what our nation is based on. In our pledge we state, in God we trust, and that's what we need to hang on to.
Yes,
we
ma'am.
need to put away what we're doing, take a look at everything, give it a chance. Something's going to come out.
Yes.
For them to take a big look at that.
May I please just ask you a few brief questions? Do I understand from your comment that as you speak to us now, on the day following the return of the verdict, that you wish you had held on to your conviction of guilty?
I did hold on to guilty. That's why I'm saying that I did fight, and I hung on to it, and that's still what my feelings are.
Yes, but you subsequently voted for acquittal.
We couldn't, there was no way that I can change the others. The others couldn't see what I saw. And that's why I say I was the one so blind, because...
Yeah. Do I understand that the decision to acquit the 4 officers, with the exception of the hung jury on the issue of the one charge against Lawrence Powell, I'll repeat the question. Do I understand that the unanimous decision to acquit the 4 officers was made at the end of the first day of deliberation?
No. As a matter of fact, with Powell, he was the very last one that we had because it was the hardest. And our decision was that we couldn't, neither one of us could, we wouldn't change, they wouldn't change, and that's what we had to.
Right. When you say we, am I correct in saying there were 4 jurors hanging on for a guilty verdict?
Actually, we had 3, and on that day we had 1 change his mind and come to our state of seeing it.
On what day? The first day?
On the day that we gave the notice to the judge.
That would be yesterday.
Yes.
So you hung on for 7 days then?
Well, actually, we had to go through all the evidence, and 3 days it took us with Paul, and it was this last day that, because we had already gone through the others, and it was still this one that we still had to.
Right. But I want to make sure I understand you, and I appreciate very much your consenting to be in a public conversation with us today. You surrendered, so to speak, to the consensus of the others on the jury panel to acquit, even though in your heart you felt these officers were guilty.
The others, based on the facts and evidence that we received, we had to go in that direction, and it was the one that they could not take away from me what my eyes saw, and that's why the word beating, we were able to hang on to that, and I was able to hang on and let them know that that is what they couldn't change my eyes, and I held on to the tape.
Yes.
As my evidence.
Yes, but you did finally vote for acquittal. Isn't that so?
I voted guilty.
Pardon me?
That's all I could say.
But you had to vote for acquittal in order for the unanimous verdict to have happened. I'm not badgering you. I truly am not. I want you to know I'm grateful for your presenting.
What it was is because of us 4 and the 8, we couldn't come to one, and that's why we had to have it called as a hung trial.
You had to what?
That's why we had to have it as a hung trial, because the 4 and the 8 could not.
You had to have it as a hung trial on the matter of Lawrence Powell.
Yes.
But you did vote for acquittal on all the other charges. You did that.
Based on the facts and evidence that we had, we did have the others
all right.
with evidence that
right.
we had.
May I ask you if you can recall, will you kindly share with us, without identifying any of your fellow jurors, I do not expect you to do that, do you remember what was said to you to encourage you to come in with a unanimous verdict? of acquittal? What was said to you? What did the other jurors on the other side say to you? Did you want?
I'd rather not comment anymore. Thank you.
You'd rather not comment? Yes.
I think that even makes it more sad, Phil, because apparently they're not even proud of what they did. They now have...
Some aren't.
Well, some aren't. At least this one must understand that now many of those in this audience, now has to live under a social climate that police can use this verdict to justify beating us. And she admits in her heart she felt it was wrong. But the legal premise is established now where we can all be beat with unanswered licks, unarmed, and you can use Rodney King as a precedent to say that it is not excessive force. And that is what is frightening, is that the whole nation will pay for what these 12 jurors did.
Right. One more question. Can you hear me, juror?
Yes.
Can you tell us on what day? We understand that the issue of the police excessive use of force against Lawrence Powell hung this jury to the last moment. And in fact, this jury came back hung on that matter. However, we also know that the jury acquitted these police officers, all four, on all other charges. When did the resolution, the unanimous resolution to acquit these police officers on all charges save one occur? Do you remember on what day that was arrived at?
I really don't know what to tell you. We went through a lot. I mean, I really